All right, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, wherever you are, and welcome to this week's episode of Crushing Land. Just wanted to make sure that we were live and everybody could hear me and all that. So this week, we're going to be talking about entitlements and development, something that's come up in our group over the last week a few times, and over the last month, actually, even a few more times, and people interested in and wanting more information in and all that. So that's what we're going to talk about. So the first thing that we're going to get into is what are they? What's the difference between an entitlement and a development? A lot of people, when they think of development, think of putting down roads and putting down a bunch of houses, subdividing, all of that. And that is part of development, but that's kind of the very high end of development. Basically, entitlements on a property are just getting the right to do some sort of work. It doesn't mean that it necessarily has to go as far as subdivision. It doesn't mean that it has to be putting roads in. It doesn't mean that it has to be putting utilities in. It could literally just be getting it ready to build through some sort of permitting process. It could be just getting a perk test done. That's a very limited view of it, but having that done and ready to go. It could be having a septic system designed if it's needed. It could be just doing some sort of thing to add value to a piece of property so that you are then able to develop it. Also, when it comes to development isn't actually going out and dropping in a bunch of houses and roads and all the things. Yes, that can be part of it, but really development is just that. It's developing the property. So any sort of improvement that you do, any sort of work that you do to the property, whether that be putting in a septic tank, whether that be putting in roads, going all the way to putting up roads and utilities and all that. And then, of course, putting the actual structure on the property, that is development. So we personally don't develop properties. We don't go that far. And I shouldn't say that. I mean, we don't go far with the development process. I mean, we've done some clearing. We've put in a road, a driveway, things like that, but nothing beyond that. We've never gone to the point of actually putting in the improvements, whatever they may be, whether that be as small as a septic tank or whether that be all the way up to putting in roads and utilities and homes and all of that. The higher you go with development, obviously, the more difficult, the more expensive, the larger your team needs to be, all of that. People always say, well, I want to get involved in development. And then I've got 100 acres and I want to subdivide and I want to put houses on it. And it's like, well, do you have any experience in that? Do you know any construction? They're like, no. And I'm like, you're really not in a position to get into development at that point. And honestly, we could. It's a whole different business than what we do. We deal with the first part, which is why we're going to talk more about the entitlement aspect today. So development is a whole different beast in itself. That's why there's development companies and all of that out there that take it all the way, take the project the whole way through, especially for larger size projects. Okay, that being said, what is entitlements and where do they come into play? So entitlements is getting something ready for development, basically bringing it right up to the development stage. And there's all different variations of what entitlements are and things like that. People kind of always talk about the subdivision aspect, and that is a form of entitlements. But there's a lot of different variables, a lot of different variations of entitlements that are out there. So, for example, I'm actually going to change my background here so that you guys can see. So if you're watching this live or watching it at all, you'll be able to see this. If you're listening to it, you probably go to our YouTube channel, The Land Method. You'll be able to see this episode. You'll be able to see what's behind me. So this here is an example of an entitlement. This here was a single property the whole way through. It was about an acre, and it was a property that needed an engineered system in order to accommodate a home. In this case, it was in a high desired area. It was near the water. It was something that a lot of people would be interested in. You could take it for multifamily, a lot of different uses. And so basically the way this property was property that we purchased, and we could have sold it as is without the issues, and then somebody else could have done it. In fact, somebody gave me an offer on this property without it and said, hey, if at this, I will give you this price. They were probably going to do exactly what I did. What you're looking at behind me here, this cost a few $1,000s to have done. We didn't do the work. This was the end of the work for us. It was just designing, having this system designed. But doing that this number that this property sold for $25,000 more than the number that the person gave without having that there, and that only cost a few $1,000s to do. So this is an example of a small entitlement, okay? It's just taking one piece of property, getting something done on it that adds value, and then from there, obviously being able to sell the property for more. Okay, what most people think about when they think about entitlements, though, like I said, is probably subdivision, so it's gonna be something more like this here. So this one here was one that we also did. This, what you see here from is a subdivision that was one single property. This was one single property, this entire thing from top to bottom here. And basically what we did here with this case is we had this property subdivided up. The road was already in place, water was in place, no sewer for this. So we had them split up. We had soil scientists go out, engineers, they surveyed it. They split it up. They put all the easements in. They put in everything that was necessary. They got perk tests done, soil tests done on every single property, and then we were able to sell that off that way. So that's a larger version of entitlement. That's taking a property that was bigger and bringing it down and turning it into, as you see here, 14 different properties. Okay, so that's some examples of what an entitlement is. Now, that being said, the point here that you've heard me talking about a few different things with the expense and the time and things like that. That's something that you need to keep in mind when you are talking about entitlements. Why is that the case? Well, first off, this is something where you're going to want to own the property. You can do properties that other people own, and you can have agreements and things like that, and you're doing things and you're checking things, and and a lot of that is in the due diligence phase. But actually getting to the work phase, if you're doing this stuff, the problem that you run into if you use somebody else, if it's somebody else owns it, is they can just back out of the deal. Now, obviously you'd have protections in place, but do you really want to go through the lawsuit and all of that to get? No. So when you get to the point of actually wanting to do this stuff, that's where you're going to want to own the property. So what comes into place there? Money. Right. And that came in. I mean, Genus made a poll in the group here. I should actually pull that up because I know that was one of the things that people brought up. Actually, money was the second highest thing. So yes, money is an issue. You do need to have capital in order to do this. Not only do you have to have capital to buy the property, you need to have capital in order to actually get the work done. So what you saw there, that work cost about $15,000 for that subdivision that I had showed. The second example, the first one was a few $1,000s. So yes, you need to have money to have the work done. Now, it doesn't have to be your money. You can joint venture with people. We're not going to talk about that at length today or anything like that. But actually, if you want to see the numbers for those examples right there, you can go to thelandmethod.com. There's a registration there for a free training that we do. If you watch the free training, we talk about our entire land business, but in that, I actually break down the numbers and how those two deals were organized. So you'll be able to see that. So go to landmethod.com, reserve your seat for that training. You'll be able to see that. You'll be able to watch that and again, see the numbers of that. So obviously, it is a concern to have money, and obviously it is something that you need. But again, it's something that you can find. There's people that are interested in getting involved in these type of projects because you're adding value. That's one of the beautiful things about these is a lot of times you can pay a whole lot more, even market value, for these properties as they sit, because you are then going to add value to the properties, right? So if the property is worth $50,000 as it sits, but then you're going to subdivide it into 15 lots, like you saw there, 14 lots, and all of a sudden it's worth a few $100,000, paying $50,000 for that property as it sits, it's not a problem, right? I'm not saying that you have to do that, but it's an option that you can do in order to get more properties like this. You don't have to have value there to begin with. So that's a huge part of entitlement, where, as opposed to flipping and things like that. We do flipping, don't get me wrong. That's the vast majority of our business, is buying and just selling them as is. Why? Because most properties don't lend themselves to entitlements. They don't lend themselves to subdivision. They don't lend themselves to other strategies. So it's just buy and sell. But that being said, when they do come along, you obviously want to be able to take advantage of them and know how to do it. So that's where the second part comes in, right? Education. So yes, you need to work with somebody that knows how to do that. That's one of the beautiful things that we offer to you, is we actually have our a la carte coaching. So if you're only looking at doing some sort of, if you're already familiar with land investing in general, and you're not looking at structuring your whole business, you just want some help with, hey, I've got this one property and this one project, you can book a few calls with us. and we can help you with that entitlement process. I've helped, you saw a couple of deals that I did. I've also helped different students over the years to get things done, to subdivide properties, to get in contact with the right people, all of that. And that's a huge part of this whole thing. What you saw there and the work and everything, yeah, it's more just oversight from our part. Other people handle the work, engineers, surveyors, all those. You're just getting to work with the right professionals and making sure it's done. We just are overseeing it, signing off on things, paying them, all of that, but they're the ones actually doing 99% of the work. One of the other things that somebody mentioned in the poll that I loved, it was very honest, and it's true, is patience. Why you're not doing more with entitlements is the patience. Yes, it is not a fast moving process. Both of those things that you saw that I put out there were over a year start to finish. Okay, over a year start to finish in order to get it done, because you're waiting on other people, and we ran into some issues, and one of them had COVID was going on and all these other things. So yes, that is an issue, is patience, which is why we go back to what I said earlier. We don't use this as our sole thing, right? Couple reasons for that. I already mentioned one, right? The first off, the properties, they simply don't lend themselves to entitlements, subdivision, whatever it may be. Most properties don't lend themselves to that. It's quick to just buy them and sell them, buy them and sell them, buy them and sell them. Also, that obviously keeps your business going. If you're just doing those other deals, you're doing that while working on these bigger deals. And then when you actually get these and you sell them and you're making tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars on the deal, then that's just more reason to keep going with some of these, having one of these going on, doing things like that, but having your other business going is just gravy at that point. So again, just a little bit there on subdivisions. On development, on entitlements. Like I said, I mean, development is basically just putting anything, any sort of improvement. You're crossing the development bridge. We rarely do that. We never do it on a large scale. We're in the land business, so we're not in the development business. The entitlement aspect, though, we've done that numerous times. It can be something as small, like I showed you there, as a perk test, getting an engineered system, splitting a lot in half, splitting a lot in multiples. We've done that numerous times. You saw there taking a property and it can be all the way up to even larger things where you're platting roads and all of that. In that case, obviously, you want to be working with the right people, because you want to be making sure that it still makes sense, because obviously when you start looking at that, it costs money for whoever comes in to do the project. They have to come in, they have to put the roads in, they have to put the utilities in, they have to do that. So it's great if you take a piece of land and you put a road in, you do all this thing, and I just created 15 lots. But if it's going to cost them millions of dollars to do the work, nobody's going to buy that project, right? So you still have to make sure it's cost effective based on how far you take that. So again, that's where some help can come in. So if you have any questions on that, reach out to us, 980-357-4545. We can work with you one-on-one to help you with the entitlement process if you actually have something. Or again, we do have other coaching packages to take you start to finish. We personally do recommend that you do all land, because that's what we teach. You do all land, and then when the things come along that it makes sense to entitle, to bring it to pre-development is what I call it, because that's as far as we go with it, then you take advantage of those and you do them. And if you are in a position where you want to do some development, I know there's some contractors out there and things that have watched this and said, I own this, and the reason I'm even interested is I know how to build houses and I don't know how to do the first part, and I want to take this and I want to turn it into 20 lots and I want to build. Okay, so you can take it further with that if that's what you want to do. So again, hopefully this was helpful for you guys that are looking at entitlements, developments. If you have any questions on this, reach out to us. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Crushing Land, and we'll catch you next time on